Imagine you're standing in the grand court of, like, a 14th century European monarch.
Oh, or maybe at the foot of an Egyptian pyramid, right? Like 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Or even witnessing the coronation of an emperor under the Chinese Mandate of Heaven.
Right.
If you think about every major human institution that has ever claimed, absolute permanence throughout history.
The ones that say they're going to rule forever.
Right. If you strip away the different languages and the different clothing and the geography, how do they all justify their absolute power over the masses?
They all claimed a divine franchise.
Exactly. A divine franchise, the divine right of kings, the infallibility of the papacy, the mandate of heaven, the chosen people.
It's always the same playbook.
It is, and each of these claims across totally different cultures and eras actually shares a really specific foundational architectural flaw.
Right. And that flaw is the assertion that a specific elite human group has this, like, VIP, non-negotiable relationship with the organizing principle of the universe.
Which is just the ultimate trump card when you think about it.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
It's the assertion that they have a special exclusive pipeline to the top.
Yeah.
And because of that exclusive pipeline, their earthly authority just cannot be questioned. It can't be challenged, and it definitely cannot be audited by the people they're ruling over.
Because if you question the king, you aren't just committing treason.
Right.
We're basically picking a fight with the cosmos itself.
Exactly. You're fighting the universe.
So today's deep dive is, it's an absolute masterclass in structural sociology that essentially takes a sledgehammer to that exact premise.
Yeah, it really does.
We are examining an analysis of Surah 25, verse 2 of the Quran, which is known as Al-Furqan.
Yeah, and we're basing this specifically on the lectures of Ghulam Ahmad Parwez from the Tolu Islam Digital Audio Archives.
Right. But before we get deep into the weeds here, let's just establish the mission for today's conversation.
That's super important, yeah.
We are going to dissect this foundational text not as like a piece of abstract theology, but as a literal blueprint for civilizational survival.
Right, and that is a crucial distinction to make right out of the gate. Because if we treat this as just another religious sermon, we completely miss the mechanics.
Yes, totally. And because of that, let's just set some ground rules for you listening. We are acting as systems engineers today.
Systems engineers, exactly.
There is going to be no religious sentimentality here. No preaching, no mystical hype.
None of that.
We are doing a rigorous, totally impartial analysis of a text that presents itself as a structural audit of human authority.
We're looking at the raw mechanics of power.
Exactly.
And the mechanics of this particular verse are just incredibly precise. Like, what is really fascinating here is how a single sentence dismantles the entire architecture of these divine franchise claims.
A single sentence.
Yeah. And it doesn't do it by arguing against them philosophically, right? Because, you can debate philosophy forever.
Oh, yes, centuries of debate.
Right. It does it by stating a structural fact about the universe that makes those claims mathematically and logically impossible.
Okay, lay it on us. What's the core phrase?
So the core phrase of the verse is, Lahu mulku asamawati wal ard.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does that actually mean in, like, a systemic context?
So it translates to the sovereignty of the heavens and the earth belongs to a single unitary principle.
Right.
But the real structural power comes immediately after that. It follows that up with walam yatakit waladan, which means it has taken no son.
Okay.
And then it says walam yakun lahu sharikun fi al-mulk, meaning it has no partner in the sovereign order.
No son and no partner.
Exactly.
But wait, philosophers and revolutionaries have literally written entire encyclopedias trying to debunk the divine right of kings.
They fought massive wars over it.
Yeah, so how does one sentence about the universe not having a son or a partner dismantle thousands of years of entrenched human power structures?
Right. It sounds almost too simple.
Because, let's face it, human kings didn't really care about cosmic legalities, right? They had swords.
Right.
So how does a text actually disarm them, practically?
Well, it disarms the justification for the sword.
I see.
Which is really the only thing that allows a very small elite to control a massive population in the long run. You can't just rule by brute force forever. You need a story.
Right. You need the people to believe you deserve to hold the sword.
Exactly. So this verse shifts the argument completely away from the philosophical and plants it firmly in structural reality.
Okay. So how exactly does that work?
To understand how radical this is, we have to look at the historical concept of what we might call an authoritarian god.
Right. Like the big guy in the sky getting angry and throwing lightning bolts.
Yeah, historically, human beings conceptualized a dictatorial lord, a sovereign whose will is totally arbitrary, who you just cannot question, and who operates purely on whim.
And if you are, say, a feudal lord or an emperor, that is a wildly convenient concept to project onto the universe.
It is the ultimate utility.
Oh, for sure.
Because if the universe is run by an arbitrary, authoritarian dictator who plays favorites, then a human dictator can justify their own arbitrary authoritarian rule.
They just say they're acting like the universe acts.
Exactly. They claim they are simply the earthly representative of that system.
Wow, yeah.
Actually, this reminds me of a really brilliant application of a theorem by the philosopher John Locke that was mentioned in the source material.
Oh, John Locke, like the English philosopher.
Yeah, that John Locke.
What does he have to do with a 7th century Arabic text?
Well, Locke essentially posited that if you want to know the cultural, political, and social architecture of a society, you shouldn't really look at their constitution or their laws first.
Wait, really? Then what do you look at?
You look at their concept of God.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the deity they construct in their minds will tell you exactly how they structure their earthly power.
So it's like a mirror.
Precisely. If their concept of the divine is a capricious tyrant who demands blind submission and punishes arbitrarily,
You'll find a society ruled by a capricious tyrant demanding blind submission.
exactly that mechanism.
That is a terrifying mirror, honestly. You invent a tyrant in the sky just to justify the tyrant sitting on the throne.
It's a closed loop of tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
But the text we are analyzing introduces a radically different, super disruptive concept.
Okay.
It introduces a constitutional system.
A constitutional universe.
Uh.
Huh. That sounds almost like a legal framework rather than a spiritual one.
It is entirely a legal and structural framework. In this constitutional system, the organizing principle of the universe is not an arbitrary dictator.
Right.
Instead, it binds itself to its own immutable laws.
Okay, so it has rules it follows.
Yeah. The Arabic phrase often associated with this concept in Parwez's analysis is kataba ala nafsihi.
Which means?
It means he has prescribed upon himself.
Oh, wow.
Right. The sovereign principle of the universe follows its own rules. It does not violate its own physical or social parameters just to play favorites or bail out a failing king.
Think about the implications of that for a second. If the universe runs on a constitutional framework rather than dictatorial whims,
Yeah.
then a monarch claiming a divine right to rule is basically like an airline pilot claiming they have a personal magical override code for the laws of physics.
Yes. That's a great analogy.
Like, it's structurally impossible. You can't just say, oh, gravity doesn't apply to my plane because the universe likes my bloodline best.
Right, because the laws of aerodynamics apply equally to everyone, regardless of who claims to own the sky.
Exactly.
In the exact same way, the social and natural laws of the universe apply equally to every single human institution.
I'm kind of hung up on this, though, because if kings don't have special override codes, what is the status of the average person?
Like, where do you fit in?
Yeah, where do I fit into this constitutional universe?
Okay, so this brings us to the context of the preceding verse, Surah 25, verse 1.
Okay.
It uses the word ab, which is traditionally and honestly somewhat unfortunately translated simply as servant or slave.
Right, I've had that translation.
But in this structural reading, Parwez clarifies that abd actually means a subordinate.
Okay, a subordinate.
Yeah, and the crucial question is, subordinate to what?
Well, historically, subordinate to the guy with the biggest army, right?
Right, historically. But in this framework, a human is defined as subordinate strictly and only to the universal rational order.
To the constitutional laws of the universe.
Exactly. If you are subordinate strictly to gravity, to thermodynamics, and to the social laws of cause and effect,
Yeah.
you are mathematically freed from being subordinate to any other human being.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit.
Sure.
Because we live in a society, right? I have a DOS. I pay taxes to a government. I have a mortgage.
Right.
I mean, I am fundamentally subordinate to other humans in my daily life. Isn't this idea of only being subordinate to universal laws just like utopian philosophy?
That is a very fair critique.
Yeah.
But we really have to distinguish between administrative organization and ultimate sovereignty.
Okay, unpack that.
Yes, you have a boss, and you have to obey traffic laws. But your boss does not own your human dignity.
True.
And the traffic cop doesn't have a divine mandate over your destiny. They are just administrative functions.
Right, they're just doing a job.
Exactly. The text is attacking the claim of ultimate sovereignty. The idea that another human being literally owns you because they represent the universe.
Oh, I see.
When you realize that the universe has no earthly representatives, your boss is just a guy managing a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Not a lord over your existence.
Yeah, it completely removes the mystical middleman.
Entirely.
That reframes everything, honestly. Being an abdi to the universal law is actually the ultimate declaration of human independence from human tyranny.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Because if I am only bound by the objective laws of reality, no dictator can step in between and say, I belong to them.
Yes. And that takes us directly into the linguistic deep dive.
Oh, perfect. Let's get into the language.
Because to truly understand how revolutionary this audit of power really is, we have to look closer at the specific vocabulary used in classical Arabic.
Especially those two words we mentioned earlier, right?
Right. Specifically the words walid and shurik.
Okay.
Because this is where the text moves from systemic logic into something that sounds almost like commercial corporate law.
Corporate law in a 7th century text? I mean, how does that even work?
Well, we really have to step out of the modern religious mindset for a second and look at the socioeconomic context of the time.
Okay, paint the picture for us.
Let's start by unpacking the word walid. Conventionally, this word translates to son or child.
Right, which sounds purely biological.
Exactly. And for centuries, theological debates have focused purely on the biological or mystical implications of God having or not having a literal child.
Which, to be honest, feels like a debate that doesn't really impact how a society builds its bridges or runs its economy, right?
That is precisely Parwez's point. He argues for a socioeconomic reading of classical Arabic. In the commercial and social machinery of the ancient world, walid isn't just about biological reproduction.
What else is it about?
Think about what a bloodline actually meant in the ancient world. It represents the claim of continuity.
Right, legacy.
It is the foundational idea of a dynasty. It is the assertion that legitimate authority to govern the productive system of a society, the land, the wealth, the labor, passes through genealogical succession.
Ah. So a dynasty is basically a monopoly on power that uses biology as its legal deed.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. So when the text says the unitary principle of the universe has taken no walid, it's not just making a statement about divine biology.
It's way bigger than that.
It is making a profound structural statement that no human lineage, no specific royal family, no chosen bloodline can inherit the right to govern humanity's productive systems.
Wow.
The universe does not pass its sovereignty down through human DNA.
That immediately invalidates the entire concept of aristocracy. Like, if the universe doesn't have a succession plan based on genetics, then the Habsburgs or the Bourbons or, any historical monarchy claiming God put their specific family on the throne,
They're all illegitimate.
they are operating a totally illegitimate enterprise.
Every single one of them. The claim to inherited cosmic authority is audited and found totally bankrupt. It just straight up denies the fundamental machinery of feudalism.
Okay, so that handles the kings and the inherited empires. But what about the other word, shurik?
Right, shurik.
You mentioned corporate law earlier, and I know shurik is sometimes translated as a partner in a religious sense, like, associating partners with God.
Right, that's the traditional theological translation.
So how does corporate law factor into this?
This is where it gets incredibly practical. To understand shurik, imagine you were a merchant in 7th century Mecca.
Okay, I'm a merchant.
Mecca was a massive trade hub, completely driven by commerce and caravans. In classical Arabic commercial vocabulary, a shurik isn't just a buddy or a spiritual companion. No, it is a highly specific legal term. A shurik is an equity partner.
An equity partner, like someone who holds shares in a modern corporation.
Exactly the same concept.
Yeah.
It refers to someone who has invested capital and therefore holds a stake in the ownership, the profits, and crucially, the decision-making process of the enterprise.
So they sit on the board of directors?
They are on the board, exactly.
Okay, so if we look at the phrase, it has no shurik in the sovereign order, we are basically looking at the cosmic equivalent of a corporate ownership disclosure.
Yes.
The text is basically saying the universe's board of directors is completely empty.
Empty of human beings, yes. The rational order of the universe has no equity partners.
None at all.
No human group, no clerical institution, no state apparatus, and no oligarchy hold the stake in the universe's operating principles.
And if they hold no shares, they have no veto power over how the system runs.
Exactly. And to take that a step further, it means they have no right to skim profits off the top of human labor by claiming they are the universe's toll collectors.
Oh, that is such a good way to put it. The universe's toll collector.
Right. Parwez notes that this is not abstract theology. Every feudal system, every theocracy, every modern oligarchy is functionally built on the claim to be a shurik, a co-owner of the productive order.
Think about your own workplace or the modern systems you interact with every single day.
Yeah.
How often do politicians or like tech billionaires or massive financial institutions act as if they are a shurik?
Oh, constantly.
They wrap their power in the language of inevitability. They say, oh, this is just how the free market works, or this is the inevitable march of technological progress.
Right. Presenting their choices as laws of nature.
Yes, they present themselves as the universe's chosen managers. They act like they hold a proprietary stake in humanity's future, which supposedly gives them the right to make decisions for the rest of us without our input.
They absolutely do. They present their administrative power as if it were a natural law. But this verse acts as a structural audit of every single such claim and finds it entirely unfounded. They claim to be co-owners of reality.
And the text says they have zero equity.
Exactly. Zero equity.
I see the logic, I really do. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
So they don't have equity. They don't have a divine franchise. But they still have the power.
Right.
They have the money. They have the algorithms. They have the military. They aren't going to just pack up and go home because a socioeconomic reading of a 7th century text says they don't have equity.
Of course not.
So what actually happens to those who loudly claim they possess this authority anyway?
Right. And this brings us to the engine of reason within this text. The tyranny of unproven assertions.
Okay.
The Walid and Shurik denials are not just statements of fact. They are profound epistemological claims.
Epistemology being basically the study of how we know what we know, right?
Yeah.
And how we justify our beliefs.
Exactly. The demand for evidence here is implicit but absolute.
It's the ultimate show your work demand. Like the text is saying, you claim to hold equity, show us the paperwork.
Yes. What empirical evidence exists that any human lineage has ever inherited cosmic authority?
Right.
What data shows that any institution holds a monopoly on the universe's operating principles?
And the answer, demonstrably, historically, empirically, is just none. Zero.
Exactly none.
But people still fall for it, you know? Millions of people still blindly follow leaders who claim this inevitable, unquestionable authority.
They do.
So how do we actually test these claims when they pop up in our own lives?
Well, this is where Parwez introduces the concept of the Furqan operating in real time.
The Furqan.
Yeah. The word Furqan translates to a criterion, a standard of judgment, or a discrimination tool. It's basically a diagnostic instrument for civilizational health.
Oh, okay. I love a good diagnostic tool. How do we apply the Furqan practically?
It's brilliantly simple. You apply it to any social architecture that claims a divine franchise or inevitable authority. You don't ask about their theology. You ask a very simple, observable question. Does this system produce human flourishing? Or does it extract wealth and labor from the masses to maintain the privilege of a few?
Oh, wow. That cuts through so much PR and propaganda.
It really does.
You don't judge a system by its grand myths or its stated intentions. You judge it by its physical, measurable output.
Exactly.
Does it build or does it bleed?
Right. And history is not ambiguous about the results of these systems.
Yeah.
Every single system built on the Walid or Shurik claim, every system that grounds its authority in inherited right or exclusive franchise rather than demonstrated productive capacity eventually hits a wall.
So human history isn't just a series of random, chaotic tragedies.
Not at all.
It's a massive data set. It's a ledger. And when you look at that ledger, it shows a 100% failure rate for societies built on the extraction and franchise model.
100%.
Like, look at the Roman Empire extracting from its peripheries to feed the elites in the capital. Look at the French monarchy right before the revolution. Look at the Russian czars. Every empire that claimed the gods, gave them the right to conquer and extract, eventually fell to absolute ruin.
They collapse under the weight of their own dysfunction.
Always.
And why? Because they're operating on unproven assertions that are completely out of sync with the constitutional reality of the universe.
They're trying to run a program the hardware doesn't support.
Exactly. They're trying to run a machine outside of its engineered parameters.
Oh, that word parameters, that feels really vital here.
It's the key to everything.
Because if it's not a dictator in the sky punishing the Romans or the French monarchs for being greedy, Why do they fall? What is the actual mechanism of their collapse?
Okay, so that is the most mechanical systems engineering part of this entire deep dive. It is the concept of the law of requital.
The law of requital.
Yes, or in Arabic, mukafati amal.
Okay, so how does that engine actually run?
To understand this machine, we have to look at the closing phrase of verse 2.
Let's hear it.
It's wakalaka kulashain fakadarahu takira.
Ah, okay. I have read a bit about this, and I know the word Taqdeer is a massive minefield of historical mistranslation.
Oh, it's arguably one of the most misunderstood concepts in the history of religious and philosophical thought.
Truly.
The traditional and highly problematic translation of this phrase is, he created everything and determined its fate.
Right, determined its fate.
The word in question is Taqdeer, which has culturally just come to mean destiny.
The idea that everything is written in stone, that if you are poor, it was your fate. If a king rules you, well, it was his fate.
Yes, exactly. And Parwez argues vehemently that translating Taqdeer as a magical fate script or divine predestination for individuals is structurally entirely wrong.
Totally backward.
It contradicts the entire premise of an open-source universe. Rooted in the Arabic letters QDR, it does not mean fate.
What does it mean?
It means precise measurement, value, or operating parameters.
Operating parameters. Wow. He created everything and assigned it precise operating parameters. That changes the entire landscape of the text. It changes it from like a mystical fortune-telling concept into an engineering schematic.
It is exactly an engineering schematic.
Yeah.
It is the assignment of precise operating parameters to every single element of the system.
Okay.
Every component of the social and natural order has a measured range within which it functions perfectly and beyond which it fails catastrophically.
There is an analogy in the source material that I found incredibly illuminating regarding this. The mango seed.
Oh, I love that one.
Can we break that down?
Yeah, it's a brilliant illustration of potentiality versus predestination. So a mango seed has the tadir of a mango tree.
Right.
That is its assigned parameter, its potentiality.
Right, but it does not mean a specific seed you hold in your hand is magically fated to grow into a tree regardless of what you do.
Exactly.
You can't just manifest a mango tree by staring at the seed and wanting it really badly.
No, you can't.
If you smash it with a hammer, it won't grow. If you leave it in a dark drawer for 5 years, it's not going to grow.
But if you plant it in fertile soil, and if you water it, and if it receives the correct spectrum of sunlight,
Yeah.
if it follows the right systemic steps within its parameters, its ultimate destination, Taqdeer, is a mango tree.
Right. It cannot become an apple tree.
No, it cannot become an oak.
Yeah.
Its parameters are locked, but the realization of those parameters depends entirely on a causal chain of events.
It's pure cause and effect.
Entirely cause-effect. And this is the law of requital stated at the cosmic level.
Okay.
The universe is not running on arbitrary divine preferences. It is running on strict, measurable, consistent, causal relationships.
Right.
There is actually a reference in Parwez's material to a scientist named Sullivan, who makes a really profound point about how scientists interact with the natural world.
Oh, what was the observation?
Sullivan essentially pointed out that scientists do not write the book of nature. They merely read it.
I like that.
They don't invent the laws of physics or chemistry. They discover the parameters that were already precisely measured and assigned.
They just map the Taqdeer of the physical world.
Exactly.
I love that. But, you know, it brings up a huge question about human agency.
It does.
If the universe is just this machine running on locked parameters of cause and effect, are we just gears turning in the clockwork? Like, where does human free will fit into a system of strict parameters?
Okay, so this is where the synthesis of human initiative and systemic results becomes super crucial.
Right.
The phrase associated with human agency in this broader philosophy is amilu mashitum, which translates roughly to do what you will or exercise your initiative.
Okay.
Humans have absolute unbridled initiative to choose their actions.
Okay, let's make this concrete with another analogy from the source material, which is strikingly blunt.
The arsenic.
Yes, the analogy of arsenic.
It perfectly clarifies the limits of human initiative versus systemic parameters.
Right, so imagine a bottle of arsenic on a table.
Okay.
You have the absolute free will to choose to open that bottle and eat the arsenic.
Right, no one is stopping you.
No divine hand is going to swoop down from the clouds and slap the spoon out of your hand. You have the initiative.
You make the choice.
But, and this is the massive but that defines the law of requital, once you swallow the poison, your free will ends, and the parameters of the biological system take over.
Yes.
You cannot choose to eat arsenic and then use your free will to decide, oh, actually, it's going to nourish me like a daily vitamin. The result is locked in by the system.
Exactly. The human chooses the action, but the universe dictates the consequence based on its precise, unalterable parameters.
Right.
And this scales up from the individual to entire civilizations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If a community builds its social architecture on the Walid and Sherrick myths, if it builds a system designed to extract from the weak to feed the privileged, it is basically choosing to ingest arsenic.
And what happens when a society ingests civilizational arsenic but desperately hopes for a vitamin?
Well, this leads to one of the most challenging and sobering observations Parwez makes in his analysis. It exposes the absolute futility of actionless supplication.
You mean prayer without action?
Yes. He asks us to imagine a group of people facing a brutal military assault.
Okay.
Imagine they are gathered in a sacred place, praying with intense, genuine devotion for like 25 or 30 years.
Wow, decades.
They are crying, begging the organizing principle of the universe for a change in their condition, for protection from the artillery shells raining down on their city.
It's a horrific image. But I mean, it's not hypothetical, right? We see populations trapped in these exact nightmare scenarios throughout human history, relying entirely on hope and sentimentality to save them.
We do. But Parwez points out that the universe's constitutional parameters do not care about sentimental supplication if the physical and social laws of defense, unity, and technological progression are being ignored.
Right, because the universe doesn't play favorites.
If you do not build physical defenses, if you do not study the physics of ballistics, if you do not organize your society internally to resist tyranny practically, the artillery shells will still destroy you.
Because gravity and explosive chemistry do not pause for sentimentality, they operate on parameters.
The system is running exactly as designed.
Wow.
When a community's social architecture violates these precise parameters, they are moving outside the measured range.
Yeah.
When those artillery shells hit, it is not a supernatural punishment from an angry god.
Right.
It is the predictable mechanical output of a system running outside its functional range. You ignored the Taqdeer of physics and sociology, and the law of requital delivered the exact mathematically guaranteed result of your actions.
That is brutal.
It is.
But it is also incredibly empowering.
How so?
It means the rescue isn't coming from outside the system. The rescue is learning how to operate the system correctly.
Oh, absolutely.
There's actually an amazing historical anecdote that I discovered while prepping for this that perfectly captures this mindset. The story of the second caliph, Omar, and the plague.
Oh, the incident in Syria.
Yeah. I'd never heard this framed this way before.
It is the perfect illustration of shifting between parameters. How did you interpret his reaction?
So, Caliph Omar is traveling toward a region, right? And he receives word that a severe plague has broken out in the city he is heading to.
Okay.
Now, the traditional superstitious mindset would say, march forward. God will protect the righteous.
Right. Leave it to fate.
But instead, he orders his entire caravan to turn around and flee the infected area.
Completely rational.
And this causes a massive scandal among his own commanders. Someone actually accuses him of cowardice or like heresy, asking, are you fleeing from God's decree?
Meaning, are you trying to run away from your fate?
Right, which is the classic misunderstanding of Taqdeer.
Mm-hmm.
They believed if he was meant to die of plague, it was inescapable.
Right.
But his response is a literal masterclass in understanding the constitutional universe. He says, I am fleeing from one decree of God to another decree of God.
That is so profound. He is brilliantly stating that he is moving from one parameter of the system to another parameter.
Exactly.
He understands that the biological parameter of the plague, the Taqdeer of the virus, is infection and death.
Right.
That is the locked consequence of exposure. The virus doesn't care that he is the caliph.
The virus is acting like the arsenic.
Yes. But he also understands the geographic and biological parameter of quarantine and distance.
He used the system's own rules of cause and effect to survive.
Right.
He didn't ask for a magical override code. He just stepped out of the path of the arsenic. He recognized that the universe doesn't play favorites.
And that realization is the ultimate synthesis of this entire philosophy.
Yeah.
Verse 2 of Al-Furqan is, at its core, a sovereignty audit. It establishes that the universe operates on a single, unified, non-franchised rational order.
No franchise.
And it proves that no human institution can legitimately claim to co-own or inherit that order.
So if we pull all these threads together,
Yeah, let's synthesize this.
we have a universe with no divine franchise holders.
Right.
No kings by divine right, no chosen people, no popes with a direct line. We have a universe running on strict, measurable parameters of cause and effect.
Yes.
And we have humans who possess absolute initiative, but cannot cheat the outcomes of their actions.
They're bound by the law of requital.
So what is the practical implication of all this for us today?
The practical implication is radical. If no institution holds a divine franchise, then every single human arrangement is subject to the exact same performance test.
Every single one.
The Furqan applies to the government, to the multinational corporation, to the economic system, just as it applies to any other social architecture.
They all have to show their work.
They do. And the metrics of success are clearly defined by the constitutional parameters.
Which are?
Well, first, does the institution produce hack?
Hack being constructive truth, right? Or the protection of fundamental human rights.
Exactly. Does it construct or does it destroy?
Right.
Secondly, does it serve the alameen?
The alameen.
Meaning, does it serve all of humanity, the entire global ecosystem? Or does it extract from the many just to enrich a microscopic few? Does it operate within the measured, sustainable parameters of the natural and social order?
And if it fails these metrics.
If it fails these metrics, the law of requital will dismantle it.
It's like that.
It doesn't matter how much divine or historical endorsement the institution claims to have. It doesn't matter how many PR campaigns they run or how much wealth they have hoarded.
Right.
If the system extracts rather than contributes, it is moving outside its measured parameters, and its structural integrity will eventually, inevitably fail.
Which is exactly why Parwez argues that verse 25.2 is not a theological statement about what happens in some mystical afterlife.
No, not at all.
It is a profound, actionable liberation document for the here and now.
It really is.
It removes the immunity that vested interests have always claimed. For thousands of years, the powerful dressed their authority in the language of divine endorsement just to avoid accountability.
Right. They said, you can't audit us, we report to the cosmos.
And this text says, the cosmos doesn't have partners, show us your data.
It completely strips away the superstition that protects tyranny.
It does.
It declares that the productive order of the universe is open source.
Open source sovereignty. That is an incredible way to phrase it.
The code of the universe is available to anyone.
Yeah.
There are no shareholders holding the patents. There are no heirs sitting on a trust fund of cosmic authority.
Right.
There are no franchises handing out exclusive territories. The universe is a rational, constitutional system, and its parameters are available to any society willing to align with them.
So if you follow the code.
If you follow the code, if
Okay.
you produce hack, if you serve the alameen, you will flourish.
And if you violate the code.
You will collapse. It's just cause and effect.
Wow. Well, we are coming to the end of this deep dive, and I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Oh, this is a good one.
We've spent a lot of time talking about historical empires, pharaohs, and feudal lords, right? But think about the horizon we are sprinting toward right now.
The technological and biological horizon.
Exactly. If the universe's operating system is truly open source and strictly bounds us to cause and effect without playing favorites, what happens as we enter the age of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering?
It's the ultimate frontier.
We are gaining the power to alter our own biological Taqdeer, our own evolutionary parameters, and potentially the planetary parameters themselves.
It is the ultimate test of our understanding of the law of requital.
The real question is, as we wield these godlike tools, are we learning to harmonize with the constitutional causal system of the universe?
Or
Are we, in our hubris, acting like the ultimate arrogant shirk?
right.
Are tech monopolies and nation-states acting like the new shareholders of reality, literally writing the code for our own civilizational collapse simply because they are ignoring the foundational law of cause and effect?
Because you cannot code your way out of the law of requital.
You really can't. If we ingest the arsenic of extractive, unaccountable AI or engineer our social systems to benefit only a new digital aristocracy, no amount of wishing or technological hype will turn that arsenic into a vitamin.
The parameters will lock in the result.
They will. The engine of the universe isn't broken. We just have to be brave enough to look at the diagnostic scan.
Extremely well said.
Thank you for joining us on this intense intellectual journey today. Keep questioning the structural reality of the systems around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.